With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, you've sent us a pretty unique pairing, I'd say, a Spanish language cybersecurity podcast, and then a few articles about recent cyber attacks and trends.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how all these sources kind of, even though they're coming from different parts of the world, they all highlight this common thread, I think, that cybersecurity is really kind of reaching into everything.
Okay.
In 2025, it's not just a tech issue. It's like it's woven into global politics and business decisions and our everyday lives.
So let's unpack this a little bit, right? We're going to be exploring some big picture attacks today,
right.
And the role of AI on both sides of cyber offense and defense,
right?
And then crucially, what you need to know to stay safe, especially if you are running a small business.
Right.
Did you know that almost 1% of employees in small businesses will click on dangerous links?
Oh, wow.
That's just one stat that really underscores why this deep dive is so important.
Yes, it's essential. Maybe a good place to start is with Slovakia's very public accusation that Ukraine launched a major cyber attack against them.
Right. That's what caught my eye too when I saw all this material.
Yeah.
What is the big deal here?
Well, in cyberspace, nations rarely make such direct accusations. It's a bit like stepping out onto a new world stage, right? Where all the rules are uncertain. And Slovakia is claiming that this was the biggest attack on their institutions ever. It targeted their land registry data.
Wow.
What's more, they believe that this attack happened at the same time as a similar incident, which they attribute to Russia.
So are we looking, is this a glimpse then into the future of cyber conflict? Are we going to see more of this public finger pointing? And then what happens? Is there like real world retaliation?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. Attributing attacks in cyberspace is incredibly complex. It's like trying to trace a whisper across a crowded room, right? Hackers can route their activities through servers in multiple countries,
right,
making it really hard to pinpoint where an attack originated. So this incident with Slovakia and Ukraine, it could signal this shift towards more open confrontation in the cyber realm.
Like a digital game of
it is,
who done it with global stakes.
Global stakes, yeah.
And speaking of high-profile targets, wasn't Japan Airlines hit with a cyber attack recently?
They were.
What happened there?
Yes, Japan Airlines was targeted, and it significantly disrupted their operations. Thankfully, flight safety wasn't compromised,
sure,
but it did impact their communication systems, causing delays for both domestic and international flights.
So even a company as large and as established as Japan Airlines, they're vulnerable to this.
Right.
It's a little unsettling, isn't it?
It is. It really highlights the need for vigilance and having robust cybersecurity measures in place. It's interesting because, the attackers used, a classic tactic, something called a denial of service attack, or DOS.
Yeah. Remind me how that works again.
So imagine a website or a server as a shop with only one door,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
A denial of service attack is like flooding that doorway with so many people that no legitimate customers can get through. And in the case of Japan Airlines, the attackers targeted their network equipment that connected their internal systems to the outside world. So they essentially cut them off from communication.
So they choked their only digital entry point.
That's it.
I'm surprised that a major airline would only have just one main connection.
It does seem like a vulnerability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It underscores this really important point. Even large organizations with tons of resources can make really basic cybersecurity errors.
Right.
And so, having multiple connection points and diverse telecommunications providers, it's like having multiple exits in that shop analogy.
Right.
Right. It spreads the risk and prevents a single point of failure from crippling the entire system.
It's like a backup generator, but for your digital infrastructure.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how how nation states and massive corporations are being targeted by these sorts of things. But what about the threats that individuals face? I was reading about how the Spanish police busted this network that was stealing bank data through fake text messages.
Yeah, this case is really interesting, I think. It highlights this growing threat of smishing. It's a form of social engineering that really plays on our natural anxieties about money.
Okay.
In this case, the criminals sent text messages to victims claiming there was an unauthorized charge of like 870 euros on their account.
Oh, I would be clicking on that link so fast.
Right.
I'd want to know what was going on.
You would, and they're counting on that. The link in the message led to a fake website that was designed to steal the victim's banking login credentials. And what's really concerning about this is that these attacks exploit like our natural reactions, like fear and urgency.
Right.
We're way more likely to overlook those red flags when we feel pressured or panicked.
It's a good reminder that even people who are, consider themselves pretty tech savvy can still fall for these scams.
Totally.
If you're not careful.
If you're not careful.
Seems like the criminals are getting more and more sophisticated in their tactics.
They are. And it's the authorities are kind of constantly playing catch up, right? This particular investigation took the Spanish police almost a year to unravel from May 2024 to December 2024.
It's like whack-a-mole, right?
It is.
As soon as you shut down one operation, another one pops up somewhere else.
Absolutely.
So what does the future hold? What are the trends we should be watching out for in 2025 and beyond?
Well, the experts in the Spanish language podcast you shared, they point to some really interesting developments, particularly the rise of AI in both cyber offense and defense.
Great. Here's where it gets really interesting. AI on both sides. Tell me more.
Yeah, it really is kind of a double-edged sword, On the one hand, you've got cyber criminals. They're using AI more and more to automate and refine their attacks. So what that means is these attacks are becoming more sophisticated, harder to detect. We're seeing things like hacking as a service emerging now, where criminals are essentially renting out AI-powered hacking tools to carry out attacks.
So even someone with limited technical skills could potentially launch a pretty sophisticated attack using these AI tools.
They could.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's a concerning development for sure. But there's a flip side to this AI coin, right?
Okay.
Cybersecurity professionals, they're using AI to bolster defenses. Think about things like threat detection, malware analysis, even real-time monitoring of security systems.
Yeah.
It's like having this incredibly vigilant watchdog constantly scanning for suspicious activity.
So it's becoming like an AI arms race in a way. Each side is leveraging this new technology to try and gain an advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
But won't this increasing reliance on AI maybe lead to a decline in human expertise? What happens if the AI fails to anticipate some new kind of attack?
That's a great question and a valid concern for sure. Over-reliance on automation, it could lead to a decline in critical thinking, that adaptability that human cybersecurity experts bring to the table. We still need those skilled professionals who can analyze complex situations and spot patterns that maybe the AI might miss and develop creative solutions to these emerging threats.
It's the human element, the ability to think outside the box.
Yeah.
That might be the key to staying ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that some of the classic attack methods are still very effective. They're still very popular among cyber criminals. I'm talking about things like ransomware, denial of service attacks. These are relatively easy to launch and they can have a pretty big impact.
Ransomware, yeah. That's the one where they lock up all your files and demand payment to unlock them.
That's it. And it's becoming even more insidious. We're seeing things now like triple extortion ransomware. So what they do is not only do they encrypt your data, but they also steal it and threaten to release it publicly if you don't pay the ransom. They might even launch a denial of service attack just to add extra pressure.
Right.
And disrupt operations.
Like adding insult to injury.
Totally. So with all these threats out there, I think, what does it all mean for our listeners, especially, those who are running small businesses?
Right.
There's this misconception out there that cyber criminals are only targeting these large corporations.
Yeah, right.
But unfortunately, that's not the case. A staggering 50% of cyber attacks are actually directed at small and medium-sized businesses. We call them SMBs.
Wow, I had no idea it was that high.
It is.
Why are SMBs such attractive targets? You'd think that they would go after the big companies, the ones with the, deeper pockets, more money.
Right. Well, it really comes down to risk versus reward, right? SMBs, they often have weaker cybersecurity defenses than those larger organizations. They might not have dedicated IT staff. They might not have the budget to invest in these sophisticated security solutions.
Right.
So, in a way, they're low-hanging fruit for these cyber criminals. They can get in and out quickly with minimal effort.
Right.
And while the payoff from each individual attack might be smaller, the sheer volume of potential targets makes it a very lucrative strategy for them.
And for the SMB that gets hit with one of these attacks, I mean, the consequences could be devastating.
Oh, yeah.
We're not just talking about a little downtime or lost data. Yeah. This could sink their entire business.
You're absolutely right. A major cyber attack, it can cripple an SMB's operations. It can damage their reputation. It can lead to significant financial loss.
Right.
In some cases, it might even force them to shut down completely.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
For sure. And it's not just about these big headline grabbing attacks, like the ransomware attacks.
Right.
Even like seemingly mundane digital activities can pose risks for SMBs.
Yeah. Think about it, something as simple as an employee clicking on a malicious link in a phishing email.
Right.
It can open the door to a data breach. Think about it. Most businesses, regardless of their size, they rely on email communications, document sharing, web browsing. All these activities create potential entry points for these cyber criminals.
So even those everyday tasks that we all just kind of take for granted can have some pretty serious consequences if we're not careful.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm starting to get a little nervous now. Let's talk specifics. What does a mild cyber attack look like for an SMB? What kind of damage are we talking about?
So a common scenario is that phishing attack we were just talking about.
Okay.
Leading to a data leak. So let's say an employee, they click on a malicious link. And that gives the hackers access to some sensitive information.
Okay.
Maybe it's customer data, maybe it's financial records. Even what we might call a minor breach like that can have pretty serious repercussions.
The damage control alone, like notifying all your customers, dealing with potential lawsuits, that would be a nightmare.
It would be.
What about a more serious attack? Let's say a ransomware attack. What kind of financial hit are we talking about there?
The average ransom demand for, let's say, a company with around 50 employees, it's about $25,000.
That's a big chunk of change, especially for a small business.
Oh, absolutely.
That's got to hurt. I imagine that's just the tip of the iceberg, though, right?
You're right. On top of the ransom, you've got the cost of downtime.
Right.
Data recovery, system repairs, potentially legal fees, regulatory fines. A ransomware attack, it could easily cost an SMB of that size upwards of $300,000.
$300,000. That's a staggering amount.
It is.
And we haven't even talked about, the long-term damage to the company's reputation.
Exactly.
Or loss of customer trust.
Right. For many SMBs, a major cyber attack, it's not just a financial setback. It can be a death blow to the business. It's so crucial for them to understand that cybersecurity is no longer an option. It's a necessity for survival.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty bleak picture here, but there's got to be some good news, right? What can SMBs do to protect themselves? I'm guessing that a lot of them feel overwhelmed. They think that having like really robust cybersecurity is just too expensive or too complicated.
That's a common concern, but the good news is that strong cybersecurity doesn't have to break the bank, and it doesn't require a dedicated IT department. There are some practical and affordable solutions out there, especially when you're working with cybersecurity providers who understand the unique needs of these small and medium businesses.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You need a cybersecurity strategy that's kind of tailored to your specific business, its size, and the level of risk that it faces.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's like finding the right tailor for your clothes, right?
Yeah.
You want a cybersecurity solution that fits you perfectly.
Right.
And the expert in that Spanish language podcast that you shared, she really emphasized this idea of finding solutions based on a company's specific needs and risks.
So what kind of services are we talking about here? What should an SMB be looking for?
Well, a good place to start, I think, is with a comprehensive risk assessment. Think of it like a digital health checkup for your business. It's going to identify, vulnerabilities and potential threats specific to your operations.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But once you know what your weaknesses are, what then? How do you actually fix them?
So the next step is something called vulnerability scanning. And what that does is it proactively searches for weaknesses in your systems that hackers could exploit. It's like a digital detective, dusting for fingerprints. Looking for those tiny clues that could lead to a breach.
So you've got your risk assessment, you've got your vulnerability scan. What comes next? What are the actual tools and strategies that SMBs can use to build up their defenses?
There's a number of options, and it kind of depends on the specific needs and the budget of the business. Firewalls are essential. They act as a barrier between your network and the outside world, blocking that unauthorized access. Anti-malware software is also crucial.
Okay.
It's constantly scanning your systems for malicious code and removing it before it can cause damage. And then you've got things like intrusion detection systems. These monitor network activity for suspicious patterns, and they'll alert you to potential attacks in real time.
So it's like a multi-layered approach to defense.
Exactly.
But we all know that technology alone, it isn't always enough.
Right.
What about the human element? After all, it often comes down to one employee clicking on that one wrong link.
That's right.
That brings the whole system crashing down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Perhaps the most important element of any cybersecurity strategy, and it's one that's often overlooked, is employee training and awareness.
So it's about empowering employees to be part of the solution.
Yes.
Not the problem.
Yeah.
They need to be able to, spot a phishing email.
A mile away. Understand why strong passwords are so important and just follow these safe browsing habits.
Yeah, investing in training to help employees understand and mitigate these cybersecurity risks. It can really significantly reduce the likelihood of a successful attack.
It's about creating this culture of cybersecurity awareness.
Yeah, that's
within the organization.
Totally.
Everyone needs to be on the same page, understanding the risks and taking responsibility for protecting that sensitive data. Well
said. And ultimately think of cybersecurity as an investment.
Okay.
Not just in technology, but in your peace of mind and the long-term health of your business. It's about proactively mitigating these risks to ensure that your business can thrive in this increasingly digital and interconnected world. That's a powerful message. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways our listeners should remember?
Yeah, I think we kind of started by looking at how cybersecurity is no longer confined to the tech world, right? It's playing a major role in international relations, as we saw with Slovakia and their very public accusation against Ukraine of that cyber attack.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, and we even discussed how this whole event could signal a shift toward more open confrontation in cyberspace.
It could.
Kind of a new global chess game with some potentially serious consequences.
It's on tickets.
Yeah, high stakes for sure. Then we looked at the impact on businesses, even those that might consider themselves too small to be targets.
Right.
But the reality is that cyber criminals are increasingly setting their sights on those small and medium businesses, drawn in by, this perception of weaker defenses and the sheer volume of potential targets.
It's easier, right? Yeah, it's easier pickings. And we talked about how, the single click on a malicious link, maybe in a phishing email, could open the door to a data breach, potentially costing an SMB hundreds of thousands of dollars in recovery, not to mention the long-term damage to their reputation and customer trust.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, big time. We also can't forget about that rise of AI.
Oh, yeah.
Which is adding a whole new layer of complexity, I think.
For sure.
To the whole cybersecurity landscape.
Yeah.
And while it's a powerful tool for for both cyber criminals, A&D, and security
Yeah,
professionals.
what's odds?
It also raises questions about the balance between automation and human expertise.
Right.
Are we
Right.
going to become too reliant on AI to protect us? Potentially missing, subtle clues or maybe even some new attack methods that only a human eye can
Yeah,
catch.
it's a question.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Fascinating and frankly a little bit unsettling question to consider. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk solutions, right?
Sure.
We discussed how finding the right cybersecurity strategy for an SMB is like finding that perfect tailor. It needs to be a custom fit.
It does.
Taking into account their specific needs
Yeah.
and the risks of that business.
Yeah.
It starts with a comprehensive risk assessment, like a digital health checkup,
Right.
followed by that vulnerability scanning
Right.
to identify those weaknesses that hackers could exploit. Then it's about implementing that multi-layered defense, including those firewalls, that anti-malware software, and those intrusion detection systems that we talked about. But technology is only part of the equation.
It is only part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't forget about the human element.
That's right.
Investing in employee training and awareness is absolutely crucial. After all, a well-informed and vigilant workforce, that's often the best defense against cyber attacks.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
Teaching employees how to, recognize those phishing attempts.
Yeah.
Understand password best practices and just practice those safe browsing habits can dramatically reduce the risk of a successful attack.
It's huge. Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's about creating that culture of cybersecurity within the organization.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be on the same page, understanding the risks and taking responsibility for protecting that sensitive data.
Couldn't agree more.
So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, this is all very interesting.
Yeah.
But what's the one thing I should do right now to improve my cybersecurity?
Yeah.
What would you say?
If I had to pick just one thing, it would be to enable multi-factor authentication on all your accounts, both personal and professional. It's a simple, but it's incredibly effective security measure that just adds an extra layer of protection, making it much harder for hackers to gain access, even if they do manage to steal your password.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Multi-factor authentication, something everyone should be using, but often don't.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway here is that cybersecurity, it's no longer a niche concern. It's something that affects all of us, from individuals to multinational corporations to nation states. The threat is real. It is constantly evolving. But by staying informed, by being proactive, by adopting this multi-layered approach to defense, we can all mitigate our risks and navigate the digital world safely.
Well said. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And now you're armed with a deeper understanding of this cybersecurity landscape. Remember, it's an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Keep learning.
Yeah. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep exploring these topics. And maybe the next time we do a deep dive for you, you'll bring us some new research to analyze.
I would love that.
Until then, stay safe online.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for diving in with us.